4. 4. 4? That's low. Definitely lower than I expected. When I guessed the Espada's rankings, I put Ukiura at 2 because I had a feeling that he was being presented as a main threat to hide a subversion where there'd be someone stronger than him, but I had no idea that it would be to this extent. That it wouldn't just be someone, but someone's. So let's talk about it. After Ichigo has made his way further into Las Noches with Nell in tow, he's suddenly confronted by Ukiura. These two haven't had the built-in rivalry of Ichigo and Grimmjow. There's not the personal animosity at first. In Ukiura's case, it's almost complete indifference, and let's not forget that when they first met, Ukiura didn't think Ichigo was even worth worrying about at all. He straight up told Aizen that this guy wouldn't be a problem. But here he is, being a problem, at least for the moment. So Kubo has done a great job of creating kind of this underlying tension and understanding with the readers that this fight is probably inevitable. And for good reason. Ukiura is kind of the type of character that doesn't expect much from others, and Ichigo is the kind of character that loves to prove people wrong. So there is just a natural kind of push and pull between them as far as expectations and meeting those expectations, or maybe, as we'll talk about later on, not being able to break the expectations that one has of you. And so far, since we've gotten to Wako Mundo, Ukiura has spent most of his page time visiting the captive Orihime. He's been making sure she's fed, and having conversations with her about her loyalty, and about the inevitability that her friends will fail and that they're all gonna die. I'm sure he's just a joy to be around for her, but he just naturally seems like a real Debbie Downer socially. At least, though, he doesn't seem to be physically cruel so far. That's left to these two, jealous Arankar girls that are bothering her and a little scary. No, Ukiura's just been stating his belief that we're all doomed. So, he seems convinced that because of how he abducted Orihime, where he made her almost come willingly in a way, that he's manipulated her so that not only will she not try to run, but she won't even resent her captors. He really thinks she's just going to be this hopeless, complacent prisoner. It's pretty twisted, but he's mostly just been her caregiver since he brought her to his homeland, and besides that, he's just been around with his usual passive disinterest, talking to the other Espada or talking to Aizen. Now Ichigo's face to face with him, and gives Ukiura something more to do than just chat with Orihime. But we'll get back to that, because while all of this is happening, we also get another Espada's battle in another part of the castle, when Renji faces off against the 8th Espada, Xyaloporo. If I'm butchering that name, and I know I probably am, I'm sorry. But that's what I'm sticking with for now, until someone corrects me. Xyaloporo. Alright, that's what we're going with for this video. We'll see. But honestly, I'm feeling pretty good about this Espada, because for one thing, I was once again so close with my guess about this particular Espada's number. I thought that he was number 9 when I first guessed, but it turns out he's one spot higher at number 8, which means that I correctly guessed who 8 and 9 were. I just reversed the order. I flipped them. Close. I got close. I was also fairly accurate about how he's a smart guy that uses strategy over physical strength, so yeah, Kubo really is able to say so much through his character design, and also the ancient laws of having glasses making you smart never fails. So I got close. I got real close, at least closer with him than my guess for Ukiura, as it turns out. We'll get to that in a little bit. But Xyaloporo is the Espada's mad scientist character. So he's similar to what Mayuri was for the Soul Society captains, and he might just be as disturbed, if not more so, than my boy Mayuri. I've talked before about how much I enjoy the mad scientist archetype. They just have so little reservations about doing horrible things for the sake of their own curiosity or their need to prove their genius to others. And Xyaloporo here falls into that category with ease. because this guy is admittedly very smart and very unnerving. So he's been collecting data on all of our heroes, analyzing their abilities to help fight them. He even neutralizes Renji's Bankai after having studied it, but the interesting part is that he studied it after watching the fight Renji had with his dead brother, an Arrancar that Renji already defeated a while ago. Yes, Szayelaporro's brother was the Zex from Gundam Wing looking guy that he fought when the Arrancars were first attacking. And from how it seems, this was an actual blood relation or soul relation and not an adopted sibling like Nell's Arrancar family. It's an interesting angle that just lets us see more of how depraved this guy is by how little he cares about his brother's death and how he viewed him. Like, Kubo could have so easily turned this into a revenge story about Szayelaporro wanting to avenge his brother, but instead, this family angle is used to show how little Szayelaporro actually cares about such things. Like, I really liked that his brother's death is only a footnote to show that he's only interested in the data he collected, and not at all mourning the loss of his sibling. Referring to his brother as nothing more than a box carrying information was really chilling and messed up. So without being able to use his Bankai, Renji's put on the back foot against Szayelaporro's minions, who are like these hollows that he experimented on, and apparently all of the Espada have these subordinates, so they're kind of like the Soul Society captain's squads, I suppose. But in this case, a very unsettling version of them, where there's clearly an abusive work environment here. Like, these guys are not okay. But we've seen more and more of these subordinates, like the Arrancar that had to wake up Stark, or the guy that defended Neutra from Chad. It does make me look back and wonder about some of them though. For instance, were the Arrancar that secretly went with Grimmjow to the living world his direct subordinates, or just guys that he recruited for that mission, or a mix of both? I could see that going either way. And then I have to wonder about Aranjero not seeming to have his own squad from what we saw, but then again, that guy would probably just absorb them. So maybe he had a squad, or maybe subordinate Arrancars knew better than to work for him. I don't know. It's all interesting, and I love getting to learn more about the hierarchy of the Espadas and the Arrancars and Aizen's army. It's all great stuff. But Renji's not doing too hot against Smarty Pants Szayelaporro, but then we get the team up I didn't expect and never knew that I needed when Oryu comes to help him out. Having these two personalities clash and have to stand side by side is really fun to read, and their methods of fighting mesh in interesting ways throughout the confrontation. And they end up having to try to outsmart the Espada to get the upper hand. They do a decent amount of damage to him. It's a fun fight with our boys throwing everything they can manage at the guy, even though it seems like he's accounted for everything, having analyzed their moves, so they show him something new. And I loved the big attack Ryu landed on him. It was just a unique method, and that one little drop of energy setting off that explosion was so satisfying. And it led to the part that really stuck out to me, and that was this gross scene of an injured Szayelaporro eating his own subordinates to heal himself. He explains that he's turned his underlings essentially into walking medicine that he can use, so he just starts ripping them to pieces and devouring them like he's having a crab leg dinner. And of note, I noticed watching the anime after that they heavily censored this sequence by having him turn them into like little balls of energy first instead of just chowing down on their limbs. I get it, but I do think the censoring for this does take a little bit of the horror away, and you guys know me, I love the horror. I love it. So these poor saps being experimented on and turned into a walking, talking medicine cabinet is just so unhinged, and despite all of his kind of pompous claims of being a genius, this scene shows the cannibalistic, voracious nature of the Hollows still remain, no matter how much you've changed. Like, you can be a scientist wearing glasses, but at your core, Szayelaporro, you're still a Hollow. So Szayelaporro leaves the fight for the time being to change his clothes. So while he's not entirely defeated, it was nice to see Renji and Uryu get a little bit of a win here, even if it's only temporary. They fared a lot better against their Espada opponent than Ichigo did, so let's get back to that. I really loved the interactions in this confrontation because it feels like neither one of these guys really care about fighting each other at first. Like, they don't want to waste the energy or it's too much of a bother, but even Ichigo isn't interested in this until Ukiura provokes him, revealing that he's the one that took Orihime and made it look like she was a traitor. I love how that's what triggered Ichigo to attack, that he didn't think Ukiura had personally done anything to him until he'd heard that he'd done something bad to his friend. So Ichigo immediately goes on the attack, and he does not play around this time, and he uses his Bankai and he Hollow Fies to try and take Ukiura out quickly, hopefully in one blow just like he did to Dordoni. But it's interesting to compare how Ichigo is able to immediately take out a former Espada member compared to someone like Ukiura. It goes much differently for him this time. And while he was a little bit more than Ukiura was expecting, which I liked, he wasn't able to do any real serious damage, and is quickly stomped when Ukiura goes back on the attack. And this is when we get to the big reveal that kind of knocked me on my butt reading this, because, like I said, I expected there to be a twist with kind of how Ukiura is being set up, that like a kind of a classic shonen twist of like, he's not actually the strongest, you know? I wasn't expecting this, because Ichigo assumes, just like we've all been steered toward, that Ukiura is the leader of the Espada and ranked number 1. And it's honestly a fair assumption. Besides Grimmjow, whose number we already know, Ukiura is probably the Espada we've seen the most, and seems to carry himself with the most power and the most authority. I put him at number 2 because I could see the twist being put in place, but I miscalculated just how much of a twist Kubo was gonna make it. Just having one Espada actually above Ukiura wasn't enough. No. When Ukiura revealed that he's the number 4 Espada, it sent a shiver down my spine, and definitely a shiver down Ichigo's too. How could it not? Because the implications of this, guys, are horrifying. He's able to absolutely decimate Ichigo, and he's only number 4, which means, as he says, there are 3 people more powerful than this. 3 people that could take out Ichigo even more easily than this. I expected 1 to be above him. I didn't expect 3, which makes me have to think about who the 3 above him are. So since I had Ukiura at number 2, do I just swap him for the person I had listed as 4? Which would be the sleepy bored guy. We found out his name's Stark, which House Stark, the North remembers. Is that the move? Do I swap those 2, and now do I think Stark's number 2? Because we saw a little more of that guy, and we saw some more of the other Espada a little bit, reacting to Eren Yearo's death. I originally placed Stark at 4 to be safe, since I think it's possible he could go either way. Either he's so nonchalant because he's powerful and thinks everything's boring, or he's ranked lower because he's so disinterested. But maybe he is higher. Maybe he is, more than 4. I guess he could be number 2, and I could swap him into where I originally had Ukiura, but I had Noitura at 3, and I don't get the vibe that he's above Ukiura. I don't know. They had that scene together, and just from that scene alone, you got the impression that Ukiura is above him. Noitura also claims he's the best. I don't know. I'm thrown off by this big time. I felt good about putting Ukiura at 2. And this just completely kind of messes with my whole list in a way, because I was feeling very strongly that he was going to be top 2. And there was a twist, or he could just be number 1 like it seemed. But I don't know. It's good job, Kubo. You threw off my list a lot by doing this. So we'll just have to see. My list is my list, and it is as inaccurate as it's going to be until I find out the rest of them. Anyways, once we learn Ukiura's placement, he tells Ichigo that coming here was useless because he never stood a chance, and proceeds to stab him with his hand, immediately neutralizing Ichigo and putting him on the verge of death. So it's not really a fight. It's a quick comparison of power, and Ichigo just doesn't measure up. So obviously I don't think this is gonna kill him, And this is the kind of situation we've seen him in a few times before, the kind of thing that Ichigo bounces back from stronger than ever. A defeat that helps to push him forward and rise above the levels that he was at before. It's just crazy that with how much we've watched him grow, it's still not nearly enough to take on the higher ranked Espada. But that's shonen for you. He's gonna have to find a way, come at this from a new angle maybe, and push himself further to new levels. But for now, Nell's really gonna have to start drooling on him to help him heal and keep him alive. So that's it for these chapters. We've learned a few more of the Espada's rankings, and we were wrong about each of those rankings, but I was more right about Xyloporo and less right about Ukiura, and we've seen more of their power, for better or worse. But there's one Espada that we know pretty well that's up to his own tricks like usual, but we'll probably get more into that next time. Thanks so much for watching, guys, as always. Sorry the video's a bit delayed. Life got a little bit busy, but we're going to try to get back on track. So I hope to see all you guys next time.